You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying. Good evening. So welcome to another edition of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, where we have changed it up and have added to the gender spectrum. So we decided to have Mike Eshelman, who, if you've seen the other podcast, What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? You know, he's been a guest on that, and he is our first guest for Girls Go Schools because we chose to do Trilogy of Terror. And we're horrible people, and we know that Mike has nightmares about the fetish doll because it impacted him at a very young age.
So naturally, we said, "Hey, Mike, you should come join us."
So if you don't follow Jenny on Facebook, her profile is basically just an aggregate of all these different horror sites. And about once every 6 months, the fetish doll would show up and it would freak me out. And then a couple days later, I'd get over it. But once I mentioned it to her, then it was showing up like every 30 days or so. So I don't know if it's like, what do they call that?
Coincidence, really.
Exposure therapy, but little by little, I think I've gotten over that initial terror. But by the math, when this movie came out, I was 4 years and 11 months old. So I was not even 5 when I first saw this movie. So that kind of explains the underlying terror that I've felt for the past 50 so years.
Yeah. See, it came out the same year I was born, so I don't even remember when I saw it the first time. Maybe one of those reruns on USA Up All Night.
Right.
It was a made-for-TV movie, for one.
Yep. Yes.
So I also was born in 1975 as well. So I think I saw it sometime between 5 and 8 years old. So sometime in the 80s, I saw it as a rerun as well. Betsy, you're younger than the rest of us, so when was your exposure to the Trilogy
I saw
of Terror?
this as an adult.
Oh,
so she has a completely different experience than the rest.
So it didn't wound me mortally as a child. I was not scarred by this film in any way. I do remember being like, wow, this is freaky as hell, and I hate that doll thing. But I don't remember, I never had nightmares or anything, because I'm pretty sure I'm thinking about it, and I think I rented this as a 5 for 5 for 5 from Video Varieties. So it was 5 movies for 5 days for $5 at Video Varieties in Newark, Ohio. And I'm pretty sure that's how I saw this film. We would rent horror movies constantly, so this was one that just ended up in our rotation. And I watched it, and I was like, "Wow, this is camp at its best. This is awesome. I love this. Who the hell is Karen Black? I love her completely." But I was probably 15 or 16 when I saw this film for the first time.
So like taking your bike to the video store.
My friend and I would drive to the video store. We would rent 5 horror movies that we would have, and then we would call and order Moore's Pizza. Each of us would get a large cheese pizza, and then we would just sit there and watch all these movies and eat pizza.
That's amazing.
Nice. Oh, so a brief summary, if you've never seen Trilogy of Terror, or even if you have and it's been a while, the summary is 3 bizarre horror stories, all of which star Karen Black in 4 different roles, playing 4 tormented women, which is basically what it is, but doesn't really tell you much. Another fun fact, the stories are based on Richard Matheson's stories, as you may remember him from I Am Legend, or The Last Man on Earth, or Omega Man.
Or Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Yes.
Also, he's responsible for What Dreams May Come, Somewhere in Time. I mean, I was really harsh about him in the Last Man on Earth one, because
I was thinking The Last Man on Earth was not very good. And
right.
But let me rephrase that. The short story by him was not very good. I actually didn't like it when I read it, but he was also a very prolific writer, as Mike mentioned, for the Twilight Zone. He did probably one of the most. He did like 20 some episodes,
including one of the pieces in the movie, I believe, the 1980s movie, I believe, as well.
I think so, yeah.
So a lot of stuff. And he did the screenplay for the 3rd of the trilogy in this set. He the Amelia / Prey was him. But William Nolan did the first 2. William Nolan, you might know from Logan's Run.
Hmm.
Interestingly enough. And also another weird parallel or not, depending on how you look at it. Richard Matheson and Karen Black both died in 2013. So like he died
Hmm.
earlier in the year, and a few months later, Karen Black unfortunately died. Though, if you look at IMDb, there's still stuff coming out that she was in some way. So it's kind
That's
of weird.
amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, we
And you
noticed
also
that
might remember
just like
Karen Black from Burnt Offerings. Not such a
Oh,
great movie,
but
but
yeah.
she was starring in
Oof.
that and she did lovely in it. Also, Dan Curtis, the director of this, was the same director of Burnt Offerings. However, this is far superior in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It was an excellent showcase to see how one person could do different roles. Yeah.
Yes.
it was.
Even different roles within the same vignette.
Yeah. Um, so I would say most people who see this movie, if you see this as a child, you almost completely forget the first two vignettes in this trilogy,
Okay,
and you
yes.
only remember this creepy ass motherfucker here.
Mhm.
And also, if you watch it as a child, a lot of the horror in the first two doesn't really.
It doesn't resonate with little kids. Absolutely.
No, it goes straight over your head. You need life experience
Hmm.
to judge those next two, the first two.
Yeah. Or to be a woman who, yeah, you have to be a woman with life.
You
Some
should,
men may or may not get it. They might get scared by the end of the first one, but the beginning of it's probably not that horrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah. So let's break them down. Julie is the first one. That's the one with the college professor, which to me is in a way because it's overt. It's the creepiest, cringiest.
oh, by
Cringiest.
far.
Yeah, definitely cringiest.
The second one's kind of a next close second, but there's a lot of innuendo that I didn't catch until like this 60th rewatch of it. So
Right. Yes.
I felt like that one was the weakest of the three.
yeah, but Julie was very interesting. So go ahead.
That was
You got
a wild
Betsy.
ride. That one was
Yeah.
a wild ride. I didn't remember it at all. So that's
Right.
something. I really didn't. And then I'm watching it, I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And then the twist happens, and I'm like, oh dear God.
Actually, when the twist happened, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's nice.
I mean, for her. So I'm like, oh, oh,
Right.
okay. So to put words to what I'm saying. So in that one, you're watching her. She's a attractive but kind of dowdy. Um,
Grumpy.
yeah, like college professor. I
Hmm.
think an English professor even, because I was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
English
English
Literature.
professor.
Yep.
Um, who has a student who keeps like following her, and you're kind of watching like she seems to be kind of like straight and narrow, and then he's like kind of deviantly following her home
He's
and
a
watching
dog.
her change and
Hmm.
kind of wearing too tight pants. That was something I noticed very
70s.
it was like 70s, not good pants, bad pants, 70s. And then he asks her out, and he kind of won't take no for an answer. So she goes out with him, and then he roofies her at the drive in. And she passes out, and then he takes her to a hotel, and then he um, strips her and starts taking photos of her. And then it's implied that he probably rapes her, date rapes her
Yeah.
in this moment. And then he puts her back in the car and he takes her home like she just fell asleep during the movie and nothing happened. And she is like, I don't ever want to see you again. This was very, I didn't like
So she
this.
says we can't date again. It's
Yeah,
against regulations. We shouldn't have
it's
done this
against
at all.
regulation.
Like,
Hmm.
'cause she has no idea what allegedly has no idea what
Allegedly,
he's
what has
done.
happened.
So
So
yeah,
he,
and she's actually apologizing to him for falling
yes,
asleep
I'm
and
so
being a
sorry I fell
boring.
asleep. So he calls her the next day and he's like, I need to see you immediately. And she's like, I think I told you that I don't want to see you anymore and that we can't see each other. And he's like, you're going for a ride with me. Basically, like, again, he kind of forces her into this meetup. So they go for a ride and he presents her with the photos that he took. And he's basically like, now we are a couple and you will do whatever I want because otherwise I will blackmail you to the school. And who are they going to believe? And she's like, oh, I don't like this. And then it seems like she's kind of capitulating. And then it shows them later where they're like in his house and he's playing music and she's wearing like a robe and her hair's all down. And she goes and turns off the music. And he's like, I wanted to listen to that. And she's like, we're not doing what you want anymore. And there's the switch. And so
She
then
had just
she's
handed him a drink too. Keep that in mind.
yes.
Plays
And
in.
she just makes him a drink and she's drinking hers and she's like, we're not doing what you want anymore. And he's like, excuse? And
You're my
basically is
slave.
like,
I own you. Basically, is what he's been
right.
doing the
He's
whole
like,
time.
I have all this on you. And she's like, but do you? Don't you
Do you
wonder
really?
why you wanted me this bad? Don't you wonder like how I was so available to you and just didn't notice you poorly stalking me? And she goes through the whole thing and she's like, I basically set you up. And now you're going to die because I just
Now
fed
I'm bored.
Yes,
Yeah.
now I'm bored. That was it.
You fulfilled your purpose. I'm
You
done with my
fulfilled
toy
your
now.
purpose, and now I find you boring. And he's
She
like,
was hard. She was like, you were
boring?
completely unimaginative and you bored me. I'm done with you.
I'm done with you. And so she's like, I have put poison in your drink. And he's like, you can't roofie me. And she's like, no, no, no,
No,
And he's like, you drugged
no,
me? She's like, no, I've
no.
killed you.
I've killed you. So good.
it was
And then
beautiful.
she sets fire to his house. She's like, didn't
Yeah.
I tell you these chemicals are dangerous and will burn?
Which, by the way, they're not actually flammable. They are dangerous to inhale and get on
Wise,
you,
but
but
yeah.
they're
But
not flammable. But anyway,
it
Huh.
looked really
Plot-
good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cool effect.
Plot
I just
point.
ruined it. I'm sorry.
Fabulous. Like, I will suspend disbelief because you rule. And then it looks like a new guy shows up at her office, like,
Yep.
hey, I need help. And she's like, of course. And you're like, oh, she's found the next person she's going to do this to.
Well, and you also
As she
see
was putting in her scrap. Oh, you go ahead.
scrapbook.
Yeah, her
Yeah.
scrapbook.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh,
But,
oh.
yeah.
And as
It's a
soon as you
nice
see her
little-
open it, you're like, oh, you've done this before, girl.
Yeah. So I think as a guy, the takeaway here is always check references. So she would not have been a professor if somebody had done the work to double check and say, no, she kind of left in the middle of the night after this mysterious fire. And you hear that 5 times as you work your way through her resume. That right there's a signal. Don't hire her.
Well,
You
look
would
like she
think.
was staying at the same school though. Like after she like burned Chad, well, drugged and killed Chad, which by the way is the perfect name for a horrible person like that.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
just-
absolutely. It was
It's
spot
well,
on.
just perfect.
Is
Yeah.
that where it comes from? Is this?
Yeah, such a Chad.
The
Now you
history
know.
of Chad.
I'm
But
willing to
you know, it
call
seemed
that
like
canon.
she was staying there that time. I don't know if that was the only college she went to. It's possible she's been stalking for years in various institutes of higher
That's
learning.
my
But it looked
takeaway.
like
Yes,
she
there were
didn't
2
leave
at this
time.
one, but I got the idea that she had moved. Like, how long is that roommate going to put up with all these burnt boyfriends? You know, so
Which
that
Well, the roommate
that's
didn't know
somebody
it was a
new.
boyfriend. The roommate just knew something weird was going on because she was coming back late and looking exhausted and drained.
And smelling like smoke.
And community colleges don't exactly have tenure.
Valid. Mhm.
Question. So the implication was that she had inserted the idea into Chad's mind that he wanted to see
Right.
her naked.
Yes.
So did she have some supernatural predatory? Was she supposed to be like a weird vampire-like thing? Because they did have a sort of vampire thing going on. Like he takes her to see a vampire.
That was my
movie.
assumption because the very first scene, as the credits are starting to roll, Chad is sitting there with like beta Chad, and he just turns and says, like, I wonder what she looks like naked. Like almost like she had sort of stuck that in his head as she walked by.
Right.
It was
She
such
was
a
like-
weird thing to
And
just
she
pop
implies
up.
that that's what she did.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got that impression from the moment. Like the second she walked by, it's like, I'll do that one. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that
And then
does
did you
make
catch
sense
that
with,
he
like,
checked
the
into the
vampire.
hotel as Jonathan Harker?
I
No.
didn't catch
I
that part.
didn't.
I did
Yes.
not. I'm gonna have to go back.
was gonna say now I'm gonna rewatch Trilogy of Terror. It wasn't hard to watch. I will watch it again.
Oh
it
yeah,
was
that was fun.
Oh yeah, it was definitely. It's not anything you watch for anything complicated. You're just wanting a nice popcorn and giggle movie.
Hmm.
It fulfills what a TV horror movie should be. It's scary enough to be scary, but silly enough and like problem enough that if you were watching it with family, some of this would have gone right over their heads in the 1970s.
As it went over our heads as a child.
Hmm.
Except
Definitely.
the fetish doll.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
All
So
in
next we
detail.
got Millicent, right? That's the
Yes.
middle one.
Middle
Mhm.
part is Millicent.
Millicent and Teresa.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think they just call it.
Or is it
Oh,
just
maybe
call
they
it
do call it
Millicent?
both. No, it
Mhm.
might be
It's
that they
both.
call it both. I don't remember, but
Millicent and Teresa, I
yes,
think is what.
but yeah, it is both of them. The twins, which every time I've watched it since I've been not 5, I've always been able to be like, this is the same person.
Same.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
So the
5
twist
seconds
was
in, I was
never.
like, they're gonna be the same person, right? Like it's her, right?
There's
Hmm.
not too many ways you can run the trope of good twin, evil twin.
But you know what really stuck out at me this time that I think I just kind of glossed over because I didn't want to think about it was the sexual relationship that was supposed to be happening between Therese and her dad. And then
Yes.
that made me think, was that the split that he had like assaulted his
Yep.
daughter and she just,
That was the triggering
and that was
event
her
that
coping,
created the
Put the
Therese.
two apart.
the slut
Yeah.
persona that was
Yeah.
responsible for seducing the
Absolutely.
dad as opposed
Which
to.
it kind of goes back to your comment about a made-for-TV movie. I mean, in the second story, you have an incestuous relationship, and in the first story too, it was sort of implied that there was he was passing her around to his friends too when he
Right.
gave her the note. So that for the 70s on a made-for-TV like 8 p.m. on ABC kind of movie, that's some
pretty
heavy
wild.
stuff. Yeah,
That's bold. That's
absolutely.
bold.
Yeah, because they can't come out and say this is what it is. They're
Right.
going to have to leave the barest of hints and let you infer from it.
Right.
And perhaps that watchers, people watching it in that in that historical context would understand the clues better than we might.
Although
yes.
in Millicent and Therese, she says, the relationship my sister had with my dad was very bad. Like, I mean, it was on the line without just saying my sister shook my dad, but it was pretty close. Pretty close.
Yeah. See how she's pressing up against him even at 12 years old,
Yep.
Even at 12 years old.
Yeah.
So, and again,
like
but
going back to this, I get the idea that I had really shitty parents if I was allowed to just sit and watch this as a 5-year-old,
I would never have been allowed to watch this as a 5-year-old.
I don't think anybody knew,
Yeah.
Again, it was ABC. Like that was our babysitter at the time. You just stick the kid in front of the TV. But in retrospect, watching this again, I'm like, Jesus Christ, the fetish doll was the nicest thing about this movie. It's awful.
It was because you have implied rape in the first one, implied incest in the second one.
Yeah, absolutely.
The third one is a supernatural doll.
Right. But in all of it, Karen Black sort of comes out on top too. It wasn't. They weren't stomping all over the female characters. She was kind of a badass all the way through it.
Yeah, even in
Millicent and Therese, she killed herself, but
I mean, the intent was there. She was going to kill her sister. It's just never dawned on her that they were in the same head. So bully for her. I'll give her credit for the kill.
what did you think about Commandant Lassard playing a serious role?
That was amazing.
Oh my God, I died. It took me a minute because I haven't seen the Police Academy movies in decades. But I'm like, it looks really familiar. So I pulled up IMDb. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Many.
Yeah, and that's sometimes the fun thing about going back and watching some of these older ones, especially from the realms of the 60s and 70s.
Mhm.
Is you're like, hey, that was so and so who was on this other thing. And you spot them through the years.
Right.
Oh yeah.
That was
Oh
fun.
yeah.
But I also have to point out, of course, you have this voodoo and Satanism, and they don't even have voodoo spelled right on the book. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Like,
Please. Oh, that's so bad. Please. Oh, cringe. Yeah. Oh, and then the reference to BDSM, sadomasochism, stuff like that, when when he's trying to save the guy from her sister Therese by, from her perversion.
Yes.
It was a lot.
He looked okay with it, like he left that room sort of happy in the relationship. Like, right. Like, I'm doing okay.
He didn't seem to have issues.
Yeah.
He was like, all right, whatever. She seemed broken up.
Oh, she's twisted and raw and sick. Okay.
Right.
Well, he was in it. That was the thing. She's like, she told me about your experience doing this. So it wasn't like he was, yeah. I think he was more supposed to be that he was offended that like Therese would share such secrets and laugh about it behind his back.
He was cool with it. Almost bragging, like, yeah. Go on. Right.
No, I mean, he left looking kind of like, but maybe it's because he figured out what was really happening. Therese and Millicent might be.
Right. I never saw her without the glasses. Holy shit.
Well, and how were they both at the funeral? I'm a little bit confused about that part.
I don't know.
Did one show up and then like another show up? So did nobody even notice they're not in the same room together ever?
Or, yeah, no kidding. Or it's the bad sister. Oh, she is so of low character. She didn't even show up at her father's funeral.
Well, but the
Right.
conversation at the beginning said that she was at the funeral. That's why I was confused. Like, so you would think it would be the bad sister that wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
Made
She
for
apparently
TV.
had been there. So did the
yeah.
good sister not go to the funeral?
Right.
I have no idea.
Millicent not go to the funeral?
Yes. Or did they take shifts? I guess must have been what happened. I don't know.
I'm sure with the made for TV stuff, they didn't exactly put a lot of effort into strict continuity.
Right.
That's my brain. I'm like, wait, but how did this work? Just like I'm like, how did she insert in Julie? How did she get into his mind? Oh, another weird fun fact. So the little girl whose dolly got broken by Therese, that was Dan Curtis's daughter.
Yes.
Oh,
And she was acting her little heart out. The director, Dan Curtis.
she was.
Mhm.
She was acting her little heart out. Your sister's mean to me. I hate her.
Oh, my dolly. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm done now. But yeah. It's just fun. You just go through all this to, hear Millicent's going to take back control and use voodoo, use her sister's own black arts against her. And then, and she does, but then, of course,
Right.
Commandant Lassard shows up and wipes off her makeup and pulls off the wig. And it's like,
Is the implication that voodoo actually killed these two women?
well, he's the cause of death unknown. So who knows?
Mhm.
Yeah, they don't specifically say it, but you'll see a shot,
That's
the
the
voodoo
doll.
doll with a needle in it. And then I'm like, okay, so how would that work then? If she's all dressed up as the good sister, and then she's like, I'm going to kill it. And if they're trying to imply that it worked, and he finds her in the wig and everything, I'm like, was there
Delay? Took some time to kick in.
quick change?
Mhm.
What?
It was a
I
simpler
know we're
time,
overthinking it,
and
but this
again,
is,
there was no VCR back then. You had one shot of figuring this out.
That's
And then,
true.
so that was it, You couldn't meet the next day and say, well, how come she was blonde when no, that didn't happen. You were already getting ready for Shogun, which was starting next week. So that was it.
Truth.
True. Very true. We're spoiled now by being able to go, wait, hang on,
Right.
stop.
Yep.
Huh.
which if you do that in part 3, Amelia/Prey, you get to see some interesting little things where like, props are being held in place and you might see strings pulling. So if you want to get bored and deconstruct,
I was gonna say
No.
it's like
That shit's real. It's all real.
it's like old school Doctor Who, where there would be a string
Right.
pulling the thing up and across, and you're like, string, okay.
Or the Dracula where the bats are in it and you see the string bouncing
Mhm.
them.
So should we move on to Amelia, or do we have anything else?
I don't think there's a lot you can say about this episode, because as I said, I felt like it was the weakest of the 3.
I was gonna say, I think it was the weakest of the three. The fact that it ends with she had the worst case of multiple personalities that I've ever seen, or dual personality that I've ever seen. And I'm like,
Most advanced cases.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, sir. Okay.
How many have you seen? Because it's supposed to be exceptionally rare, but okay.
And it begs the question, how often do you see this in your practice?
So weird at the
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that I thought Karen Black did an excellent job
Oh, yeah.
portraying those two roles. Like
Mhm.
they
I was
were
gonna say
very
on both
distinct.
characters.
The makeup was really good. I mean, like obviously if you paid attention, you could tell it was her. But at a glance, they looked very different,
Mhm.
you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And another aspect that just occurred to me out of the made-for-TV movies, they didn't exactly have the 55-inch, 65-inch screens in their house.
Right.
So,
Smaller one.
Right.
now that I'm thinking about it, and Mike, I'm sure you can attest to this too, the smaller screens,
Mhm.
Lot
less
more forgiving.
resolution.
Yeah, the illusion held back then.
So let's move on to Mike's favorite.
Yeah,
Amelia
let's
slash
do this.
Craig.
Let's do this.
So did you love? So we have again another shout out to Karen Black. So the beginning conversation where she's on the phone with her mother, Karen
Oh,
Black rewrote that.
she needed to cut her mother off. I'm like, oh, that's
Well,
like
but she
narcissist
rewrote
playbook.
that because
She
initially,
did.
apparently, the conversation was like her mom came across as too nice. So Karen Black rewrote that dialogue so you could understand that her mom was a manipulative, like
Bitch.
controlling bitch. Yes. So it was
Right.
really clear. And also, so you didn't feel too bad about what her mom was about to walk into when she came over to her daughter's
Not
house.
at all. Not at all.
No. You're like,
Right.
yeah, killer. Oh. So sorry.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
Ruby
I
doll.
didn't know about the rewriting. That was great.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, because
But she actually did
time,
writing on other stuff too later in life as well. So
the whole time when she's going through that conversation at the beginning, it's like I can feel my blood pressure rising.
Right?
No, seriously, I was like, hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. Hang up the
was she
phone,
talking to
Karen.
my mother?
Right.
I wasn't quite that bad. That's not fair.
I was gonna say it's absolutely not my phone, my mom, but also I know that mother. Like I
Yep.
know people who have that mother, and I'm like, just hang up the phone. You're never gonna make her happy. Never, ever, ever. And her mom's like, Mom, I'm just living here for a while. I had to move out and get out on my own. I'm old enough, all these things, and you feel really bad for her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no. Oh no. It's creepy. I don't like it. I don't like your relationship with your mother. I'm sorry that you feel this way. And then when she calls the boyfriend, it is like, hey, it is my night out with my mom. I know it's your birthday, but can we celebrate it a day that's not the day of your birth, please? And I was like, if he breaks up with her right now, I'm not going to blame this man whatsoever.
No, I wouldn't.
See,
But
I kind of
also-
took the alternate to that is if he's not 12 years old, I think he can celebrate his birthday on a day that's not actually his birthday.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
it's an early relationship. They had only been going out with like a month or two.
Yeah, a
And,
couple
and
months.
this was like their first sleepover. So this is early days. And
did you get the implication that she had moved out because of him? Because she
no.
wanted to.
And I think she even
I did
mentioned in
not.
the conversation that she met him after she had moved.
Well, that's what she told her mom.
Well, yes. So I got the idea that she had met him after she had moved, but still, his birthday's on a Friday. You've been dating, let's say maybe 9 times. You haven't slept together yet. Just bump it a day, dude. Relax. He
Right.
was giving her
Yeah,
all
On
this
Saturday
shit.
instead.
And again, like it had to come up at some point in the relationship. Like, yes, I see my mother every single Friday. No exception. No exception. Not including your birthday there, Ace. So grow up. But again, soapbox off.
There you go, Mike.
Yeah,
That's
I
a lovely
appreciate that.
perspective. Thank you.
He's the monster. He's the monster here. The fetish is so misunderstood.
Well, I would say the mom is also
Oh
the
God,
monster
she's
here.
the
I think the
worst.
fetish is the least
The
monstrous thing in the
worst. Yeah.
I
It's a
was
very
gonna say,
generic
Yeah.
term. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Even the
but
Zuni
yeah, so
fetish
the
doll
fetish
is better
doll,
than the mother.
oh,
Right?
the fetish doll is meant to be a birthday present for the boyfriend, who I believe his name is Arthur, who's an anthropologist,
He's an
Yeah.
anthropologist.
and it's He Who Kills, I think is his name. The
Yeah.
fetish
Yes.
doll, not Arthur's. And because of this big thing about how this gold chain is around him, so that the spirit and the doll don't become one, and so the doll won't come to life. So yeah, this gold chain, and of course she sets it down after being upset, talking to her mom to go take a bath, and guess what happens?
She breaks the chain.
Hmm.
Dun, dun, dun.
And then comes back in, and she can't find the doll till it finds her.
Where did it go? And
And
there's
she
this,
makes the most lovely noise. I want it as a ringtone. It's like
No, you don't. No. Oh my God, that's terrible. That
Sorry,
sound. That sound. It's as bad as the sound his tiny murdery feet made on that carpet when she first realizes he's loose. That little like, oh my God. Did that not make the skin crawl all over your body when you heard that?
No, that's just what it's like to live with a chihuahua. My chihuahua made that same sound. Like,
But this
That's probably what they based this off of. Betsy is a chihuahua because it acted a lot like those motherfuckers.
that's fair because they're tiny,
Right?
crazy little killers.
Yep.
Just teeth. Yeah.
for every bit that it was terrifying, there were moments that I was literally dying. Like, I was laughing so hard when he's like stabbing under the door with his little tiny
Oh
knife.
yeah.
Or when he's cutting through the suitcase.
Yes, that was awesome.
She's like trying to grab the spear point. Like, throw that bitch out. I'll like, deal with it.
Open, but like,
Open the
break
window,
the
shut
window
the suitcase outside. Problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else's problem, at least it wasn't her.
No.
Again, it's somebody else's problem. It's no longer yours.
I love when
Bruce.
she calls the police and she's like, I just send the police.
She can't exactly. So, what are you gonna say? A 4-inch tall doll is running through my apartment trying to kill me with his tiny little spear.
I'm being attacked by a tiny person.
We're gonna be like,
The
okay,
fetish doll
yeah,
that's possessed by his spirit is killing me. Yeah, no.
they're gonna send people, but it's gonna be the people with the little white van and the nice
Right.
jacket.
Well, here's the thing that bothered me. So, I mean, I realize it was 1975, but I do recall, like in the 80s and stuff, if you dialed over the operator, say you needed the police, even if you didn't explain things, they would come.
Mhm.
They'll come. Yes.
They did not come for this woman at all. Like, at no point
Well,
during the show were police
yeah.
called
Oh,
out.
and
Well,
speaking,
there's a priority about how fast they might show up, though, I
I mean, was
suppose.
she in my neighborhood in Youngstown? I'm sorry.
right?
Go ahead, Mike.
I noticed that when you said the 70s, it reminded me of the technology. Was Arthur's phone number 111-1111?
It
When
must have
she
been.
dialed that, didn't she just go like instead of
I
it
I did
letting you
not
go?
pay
Like,
close enough attention.
I
yeah,
think there
believe
was some
she did.
continuity issues when she was dialing. There was never. Wasn't
that might
consistently
have
the
been
same
it. I'm
amount of
like,
numbers for
this
sure.
guy's number is 111,111. This is amazing. But it could have just been laziness too. But so, okay, after watching it as an adult, do you get why this was so damn terrifying to a little kid?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, the way that the camera shot from like the fetish's point of view around the couch and chasing her legs, and it went for that like the poltergeist clown move where the only place that you're safe is in your bed in your room, and the
Yeah.
damn doll climbed the comforter to get into the bed too. That creeped
Yeah,
me
because
out.
close to a
Every
take on, the classic monster under the bed thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
every time he climbed up over with things sticking out of his teeth, I thought I was going to die. I'm like,
Yeah,
why
no,
is that so cute? He peeks up over and he's got that thing stuck in his
I was
No,
laughing so hard during that entire sequence of
Well, I know it would absolutely be terrifying. That is the cutest shit I've ever seen.
to be honest, like I have never not understood why this fucked you up as a child at all.
Right.
Like, no, I mean, like having seen it when I was young too, this was some terrifying shit.
Right.
As an adult, it's fucking hilarious. But when you were a little kid, the first time you ever saw this, it if it didn't fuck you
Oh
up, you
yeah.
probably are possessed yourself, and that's cool. And I'm a fan of yours,
Right.
but yeah, no. Or even the movie Dolls, a horribly
Oh
stupid movie,
God,
but the
yeah.
little dolls with like the blood and the eye. Bleh, no,
Hmm.
I don't think I ever saw that one either.
I
Whoa.
think it's an '80s movie. Otherwise, we could do it here, but maybe we'll do it on What the Fuck if you want. But
I was gonna say that one's a because there's the leech girl. It's not good. I used to have I had an action figure for that's not okay. Um, for a long time.
Oh, so
Uh,
your childhood trauma is off limits, right? But it's okay to make fun of other
oh
people's.
no,
just
my
your life,
childhood
just
trauma
yours.
is way weirder and like it is one episode of Twilight Zone where there was like a body snatcher type thing happening. And we had chicken that day, and then the person peeled their face off and it looked like chicken skin. And it took me like years to be able to eat chicken after that.
That must have been one of the newer ones.
It was a newer one. It was a new,
Alright.
yeah, the new batch of Twilight Zone. But there was one where it was like almost an Invasion of the Body Snatchers style face peel off thing. And it really messed me up for years and years and years. And I was watching it without permission, like it just was on. And so
Right.
I was sitting there watching. So I couldn't tell anyone that I was really, really freaked out because I wasn't supposed to be watching it to begin with. So I just had you bear the fear and just be like, and for like weeks, I dreamt that my whole family peeled their faces off. Like
When you didn't get caught, so you thought there were no consequences, but there really are some consequences.
the consequences were I had to live with this thing that I had done to me.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was
I
mine.
think it's more
Uh,
effective.
but I saw it far too young an age.
Yeah.
I also
So
choked
scary.
once while watching a Freddy Krueger movie, so like inhaled a nacho and had to be given the Heimlich maneuver.
But you know what really actually what fucked me up more in this movie, in this section, more than the fetish doll itself was the end when Karen Black was
Oh,
possessed
yeah.
by it. That
That
whole
was
her face
good.
and those teeth and that crazed look, that as a child, that's what kind of haunted me a little bit.
Yeah, because you see
The
the look,
fetish
but
doll scared me, but her like I
Yeah.
had this thing. I watched The Exorcist way too young,
Yep.
so my trauma was possessed demonic, beings,
yeah,
and so that fucked me up more was
and
her.
seeing the teeth, because
Mhm.
she's smiling, and you're like, and you're looking, and then the smile grows more, and you're like, wait a minute,
Hmm.
that's not right.
And she's got the perfect look.
Oh,
And
that
then
was
when
Oh,
she's sitting there
amazing.
with the
Yep.
knife,
yeah.
it was just
I remember the
fabulous but
doll.
horrifying.
I did
Well, I
not
saw
remember
a
the ending.
quote
I had a plot.
online about her acting was that she would act with with every look, with her eyes, with her movements, everything, and that scene encapsulated that.
Which also that was her idea with the teeth and stuff to at the end.
Oh, really?
That
Yeah,
was
the
also her
teeth were
Okay.
her
contribution.
idea, and the
Yeah.
look.
Betsy, you were
Brilliant.
saying something?
Oh, I said I didn't remember necessarily that part. I remembered the fetish doll, but I didn't remember that specific part of
I
it.
do remember that from the 70s. Like that image of her, not necessarily with the whole knife into the floor thing, tearing up the rental property, but I remember the teeth. That kind of freaked me out too. But
I was like,
again, looking back at this almost 50 years later, you're kind of rooting for the soul trapped in the body of the fetish doll. Like he hears that conversation and he's like, I want to help her, but the only language I know is violence. So when the little, his belt comes off, he's like, I got you, girl. And and he comes to help her. So again, I think you got me over my fear of this because he's like the accidental hero of this. He comes to help Karen Black deal with her terrible mother. So thank
That
you.
is
Thank
one
you.
way to look at
Complicated.
it. Just you wonder if Karen Black will ever or Amelia will ever be able to be Amelia again, though.
Yeah,
Mm,
or is she stuck
I mean,
with
she
the
turned it
spirit in
on
her?
and off to make the phone call, and
Fair.
hopefully, she calls up that douchebag boyfriend. It's like, let's celebrate your birthday after all, because it's all about you. It's all about you. And then dig up more of that rental floor.
I kind of took it as the phone call was the spirit using her to draw in another victim using the capacity, because her body as an adult human and not a tiny little doll has much more capacity, and is it using the memories in her mind to pull in more victims.
Okay.
I mean, I like both takes, and I was thinking both ways about this as well too, because if he was just going to go on a murder spree, though, he could have just gone out as her and just started killing people.
Yeah, exactly.
But he chose to call up the mom, or let her, or did she choose to call up her mom, and so it's real interesting.
Yeah.
I like the whole, maybe he's the hero as opposed to the vile creature thing. I like it a lot.
And I think in this, maybe it's not so much that he's a hero or a villain, but he's an elemental force.
Yeah. He's a force for her.
You're just caught up in it, and it does what it does.
I kind of like the idea that she's in there somewhere and she's like, you know what? Fetish doll, take the wheel.
That's a funny thing. So yeah, I used to be horrified. Anything involving possession for years, even into adulthood. I had a hard time watching it. And then I hit a point where after so long, there's so many different things going on in my life that I was like, you know what? Some demon wants to take over. Get on it.
Yeah, go for it. I
will. See where
honestly,
don't abandon me in the room. Keep me insane. Don't let me be back sane and then in the padded room trying to figure out what happened. Just finish the job.
As an adult, I think the scariest part of that story was watching her use a metal knife on a metal baking sheet to bake a fucking steak. I mean, what is going on here? You've lived away from your mom for 2 months. By now, you should have figured out how all this stuff works. So maybe she had it coming, maybe the smoke monster is justice, and he's just wiping all the awful people from this story.
You washed your cast iron with soap.
Yes.
A Brillo pad even. Die a horrible death.
I will say, when she's holding him into the oven is like the best, because he's making all the noises like it's very terrifying. It's like, don't open it.
But it's all the tropes, all the bad horror movie tropes happen in this third piece. Like everything that you should not do to escape, a killer, she did. Like every dumb possible thing. Like, no, what? But no, what? Did you stop? Like one of the times I was watching it, a friend came over to visit the dogs, and she's watching it. She's in her 70s. She's like, "What is wrong with this?"
I like that she didn't know how to open her own security latch on her door, that she had to break it to get the door to open.
Yeah.
So I think he had done something to it, because I keep wondering about that, but it was like bent in the wrong way, so she couldn't get it open. I think it was supposed to
be. But it was so high up. Well, and again, made for TV. I get it.
Yeah.
It's an imbued fetish doll, Mike. That's why it was scary. It just did a long jump. I mean, you saw it. It could scale the bedspread.
No, those things cannot jump. All right, they can climb. I'm not taking they can murder.
Watch out!
Let it jump.
Right. It's like seeing a cat with thumbs. Like, oh shit, we're done for. If they can communicate with each other, like the little. Like, the second they can start writing letters to each other and planning, we're done. So if the fetish dolls can fly, I'm out.
You're locking yourself in a bunker.
I will hide out somewhere. I will hide with Arthur because he's safe for now. He'll never go back to our apartment. He's too embarrassed.
Yeah. Not wrong.
I think you are wrong. Next phone call was going to be Arthur, and he was going to come over.
Rightly so. Rightly so.
Because Zuni Karen would be like, you know what? Let's celebrate your birthday in my bedroom. And he'd be like, yep. And then
And then she comes up with the knife in her teeth.
Well, something. I felt like there were some lost moments, like there should have been, he could have broken through the bathroom door and made some grumbling noise. It sounded like here's Johnny. Well, I think this was before The Shining, wasn't it? At any rate.
I want to say The Shining was 77, but I could be entirely wrong.
I think you're right. I do believe The Shining came after. It might even be 80 that The Shining came out. I don't remember now.
It could be.
Betsy, what you got? What's the internet say?
Looking. Hold, please.
But well, in which case, do you wonder if it was after this?
1980.
Oh, okay.
That maybe Stephen King was watching Trilogy of Terror and decided to have the. Well, Stephen King was not really. Stanley Kubrick would have to admit, because Stephen King did not really like what Kubrick did with the movie. So, and admittedly, I have not read the book, so there you go.
I got partway through the book and I was like, I just can't read this. This is not good.
I like The Shining. It's fine.
I like some of Stephen King, but some of it's a little tedious to try to read through, and I'm not a patient woman. So
I get it. Yeah, it's not all of it's great. No.
And then you listen to some of it after living through a pandemic, and you're like, "Whoa, this is really different now."
But yeah, so that's Trilogy of Terror, and it's funny because, like I said, most people hate the first two vignettes of it. Like they only like the third one. They hate the first two. There's a lot of places you can watch this for. Well, there's about 3 or 4 places you can watch this for free. One of them, you can find a YouTube episode. I think it's like Creature TV. They do it, which is like a horror host kind of thing. And
I
they
found
just
YouTube of some channel.
Yeah, they keep making fun of the first two of it being like completely useless stories, and that it should have just focused on this third one. But I really, when I had watched it the few times since I've been older, I really do like the first two. I will agree, like the middle one is the least likable of them, but it still has value. But I think the first one especially holds up in a completely different way when you think about it now.
An entirely different way when you're an adult watching it than when you were a kid watching it.
Absolutely.
But I mean, even in the retrospective Me Too look, like here it is in the 70s, and they knew that this shit was going on then. So like, just, but did you also wonder, like, okay, so like what I kind of started to worry about with the first one was this a weird way of trying to blame a woman for getting raped? Like that she had insinuated it into his brain to begin with.
I was not.
It made me kind of cringe thinking about it.
I don't. I mean, and again, I'm looking at this from a male perspective. I didn't look at it from that point of view. I just saw it as she was in control for moment one, so there was no blame to occur. It was just she was in control. So I didn't see it from that perspective. But again, my view is a little bit different from yours too.
Right. It did strike me kind of a little odd that it was like her being like, "Oh no, you can't rape me because I was willing the whole time that I was passed out cold."
Yeah. Well, because there's that justification that is often used when women report rape and they're not beaten, that they say that they must have wanted it. Like they did something to draw the attention, the way they were dressed, the way they acted, the fact that they were out at night by themselves. Why were you alone with him?
Right, to go to the pub.
Yeah. And so from that perspective, it made me cringe thinking about how, like, at the end of it, there was kind of like it was her idea. I like the empowering where she was just basically a serial killer. So that kind of takes away from that feel of it, but it's the initial insinuation just kind of made me go,
I guess to rationalize that point, I think she knew she was getting drugged too.
Oh yeah,
like she said, she pointed out like the root beer tasted bitter or something. So maybe the whole thing was her idea, and that's her fetish, And again, if she's been doing this over and over and over again, you would have to assume that the extreme level that she would go to get a rise basically would escalate, right? If she has this superpower, as you call it, that her addiction would just keep compounding itself.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, agreed. Like in the when it keeps following the line, you get the strong sense that, but like I said, the thing I don't like about it is people watching it and going, "Oh, see, there's another case where."
I could see that. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Same thing with the middle one, where it was like, at no point did they really kind of focus on the fact that there's a father having sexual contact with his 12-year-old daughter, but they kept focusing on it being her, being Therese, being, hypersexual and pressing herself against her dad and wanting the relationship and, possibly poisoning her mom so she could be with her dad. So, I mean, just things like that. Like, it's hard to watch and not get leery about, like, what message are they really trying to
True.
put in here.
I
Even though
will
I
say,
don't think that was the intent of
No,
these
and
TV
again, you have a
shows. It's
male
just
writer for a made-for-TV movie in the 70s. I don't think,
mhm.
honestly, I
I
don't
don't think they
think
were
the
thinking
female
about it at all.
perspective was any part
No,
of the writing process, to be honest with you.
no. But I admire the fact that they flipped it that way. Like that they flipped.
Oh, for
Like I
sure.
admire the fact that two male writers. Well, really, the first two was the same guy, but that actually they took it where they like took this theme and showed how it was really, you know, like the woman was the one that was empowered,
Right.
basically speaking, and but like I wonder about motivation because I'm just like that.
Hmm.
Well, because of the world we live in, basically.
I just looked it up because I just thought of it. And I was trying to remember when the movie Sybil came out, which would have been another made for TV movie about someone with multiple personalities. So,
Mhm.
Sybil, the book came out in 1973, and the film adaptation or the made for TV movie starring Sally Field came out in 1976. So, this just predates Sybil coming out. So, I'm going to guess that this was just in the zeitgeist, like the entire idea of having multiple personalities was just in the zeitgeist because of Sybil and a couple other books that came out around the same time because they had just hit upon multiple personality disorder. But I don't think they wanted to make it an obvious knockoff of Sybil. So they made it a dual personality instead of being like 16, which is how many Sybil had. But it just occurred to me, I was like, when did that come out? Because it would have been around the same time. Um,
True.
Yeah.
and it was. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can see where they were like, hey, let's preempt this story by telling our own little version of this story and having it based on trauma and, possibly based on trauma and whatever. But telling that kind of same story only in a fictionalized way as opposed to
Well, you
Sybil,
know
which
what
was
though?
supposed to be a true story.
It's fun fact, but that the real Sybil actually admitted that her multiple personalities were actually fake.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So,
well, the whole
we grew up
psychiatric
thinking it was
field is
real, but
very
she
COVID,
actually was like,
multiple
yeah,
personalities.
the whole
the hell of
psychiatry field
imagination, though.
is yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's funny because it's like the most famous case, and then it's not even real.
A real case.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it was a real case, but she made it up. But
Made it up.
fun times. Well, I mean, I guess so, Mike. Now that we've terrorized you and picked on you, how
I
are you
appreciate
feeling
it.
about our
Thanks.
fetish doll now?
I'm okay with him now, but having a terrible memory, I'll forget we did this about a year from now. So when you post the fetish doll again, it'll still that like 4-year-old me will come bubbling back to the surface. And I'll be terrified again. But at least I got a moment, to look through the monster's eyes and see the true horror, which was Amelia's mother.
Absolutely.
A controlling narcissistic parent is the true
Right?
horror. Which for Gen X, that actually holds.
Yeah, absolutely. This is practically a documentary.
Question. Have any of you ever seen Trilogy of Terror 2? I believe it came out in 1997.
No,
I have
I
no
have
No,
not.
recollection of ever seeing it,
nope.
and I
No.
can't find it streaming anywhere. So
No, I read about it when I was looking up the stuff for this, but I was like, I don't think I've ever seen this anywhere.
No, and you
Yeah, I
can't
saw
rent
the
it online either. It just doesn't exist.
yeah, I saw it referenced, but I've never heard a damn thing about it.
Hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna
Never
have
come
to
across
pester
it in a
John Paul and see if
DVD.
he can
Nothing.
find a copy because I'm like, now I have to know. And I believe all the same people were involved. I don't know
Yep.
if Karen Black was or not, but I think Dan Curtis was and Richard Matheson was. I don't know if William Nolan was or not. Which William Nolan was the one that like survived the longest. He lived to 2021 and then he died. So
Hmm.
sadly. But
Oh
but
God,
all
it came out
right.
in 1986. That's a bad time for it to come out.
When?
96.
Okay.
So it was probably schlocky as hell. I'm just saying.
Oh,
Mhm.
I'm sure.
I'm
Oh yeah.
sure.
Mm.
86. All right. For some reason I thought it was the
Entirely.
90s. Shows you how much I'm paying attention.
No, 96. 96.
Oh, it was
Oh.
90. It was the 90s. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it was on USA Network.
Oh,
Yeah.
well then I'm sure it was fabulous.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you
Mhm.
think it was an up all night movie?
I bet it was.
All night.
Gilbert
Commander
Gottfried.
USA's groovy movies.
So I mean, of the movies we've talked about here, I think a lot of people still won't like Trilogy of Terror, and they still will only like the third installment of the trilogy.
Mhm.
Um, I like it. Does it hold up? Yes, in a sense, and no, in another sense. I mean, on bigger screens you can see a lot of the flaws, but I mean, a lot of the stories you could update, with better budget, and I think it would work.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think you could do a few alterations and it would work.
No, which I don't really want to see it redone because I just love
No.
the initial fetish doll for sure. And I don't see anybody being as
I
great at
don't
it as Karen Black, but
I don't want
Mhm.
to see a realistic fetish doll
No.
come to
Let's
life.
keep this in the
Because
past. Let's
oh, sorry, Bob.
let's
Because
keep this where it is.
they CGI the heck out of everything. And
Mhm.
the part of what makes it funny is it's the absurdity of this tiny little doll chasing you around. Yeah.
Just that sound. Oh,
So
it's awful.
It's like they took the chipmunks and sped them up a little bit more.
Right.
um,
Ugh. Ugh.
I mean, it would probably do for the fetish doll what the I think it was the 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake that was not associated with Romero when
Mm.
it brought in fast zombies. You know,
Y'all, I'm
it would.
just reading about Trilogy of Terror too. And the last segment is called He Who Kills. And they come to the double homicide of Amelia and her mother.
Oh,
Huh.
So it's
Interesting.
literally a sequel to Amelia.
yeah. Well, damn. Now I want to find it.
Right?
I just had to share that because I was like, okay, I'm just curious. Karen Black is not in it. The person who plays in all three is a woman named Lisette Anthony.
Oh yeah,
oh, I think I
yeah.
did see it because I remember for years thinking that it was Lisette Anthony who played all three in it and not Karen Black. But
Hmm.
so Lisette Anthony, I know her name because of the movie Kroll. So you can think what you want
Yeah.
about me, but that's why I know who she is.
She's also
Yeah.
in another TV movie, something during George in England with the Highwayman and blah blah blah.
And Dracula Dead and Loving It, apparently, because I just looked it up.
That's
Oh.
right.
So, but I just had to share that there is, in fact, a sequel to and a return of our fetish doll. If you watch the second installment of Trilogy of Terror.
I wonder if like I saw that and like totally erased the first one and then saw the first one after the fact. Who knows? I know I saw this first one when I was a kid, but the only thing I really remember is the fetish doll.
Mhm.
So I think I must have seen the newer one sometime in the 90s, and that also helped me erase the other part of the other two movies, the Trilogy of Terror,
Yeah.
until I resaw them and went, huh. But now at least I feel good because like I really did have a memory of Lisette Anthony playing
Mhm.
all three roles. And then when I rewatched it several years ago, I was like, no, this is not, doesn't even look anything like her. Why would I think this? Now I know.
It must be, but now you know. That's why.
And knowing is half the battle. Sorry,
I like
G.I.
this
Joe.
song. I really like this.
All right. Well, on that, welcome to this. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed our therapy session. And Mike, thanks for being our first guest.
Oh, thank you. And good luck finding a ghost. Now that you've had a ghoul on, I wish you luck in your search to finish out your trilogy. So, but thanks for having me on, and thanks again for dredging up my childhood terrors
No
for
problem.
all the world. I
Very
appreciate
welcome. You're very
Anytime.
welcome. We will happily scar you for life anytime.
you. Betsy, honestly, if I ever do a podcast about chicken skin, I know who to have on. So definitely.
I was a scaredy cat as a kid, so you could get me with a whole lot of stuff. Scaredy cat.
Yeah.
I'm
Deal.
just giving you the one that I can think of, but there are so many more. I don't even want to talk about the Gmork from the Neverending Story.
None of us do.
It's bad. It's bad. It ruined me. It's fine. It's fine. And now I'm the desensitized person that I am today.
Oh, well. Well, I guess with that, thanks for joining us for another episode of Girls Go Schools.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good night.
You have been listening to the Girls Go Schools podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Go Schools Podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghost Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Go Schools Podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcatcher.